So I want to start off with a question. We know in the United States there's this ongoing discussion about the disconnect of the skills that university graduates receive after their education and what the workforce requires. Can I ask you guys to reflect and see, is this something that you're also seeing in China? And if so, what types of solutions are people doing to address them? And perhaps I'll start with you, Wenjuan.
Absolutely. I think there's a global challenge that the education system has not reformed as quickly as we wanted for the past 100 or so years. So there is a skill gap in the workplace anywhere in the world. And in particularly in China, because there's such a large workforce. And there's a lot of students, but not enough relatively well-trained teachers. So there's a huge problem for the demand for upgraded workforce to deal with the future of the work, but not enough supply of good quality education. Starting from very young age to professional learning. So I think we run an online company, and I think technology is definitely one of the drivers to solve this problem globally.
Excellent, excellent. Cindy, would you like to comment on that?
Absolutely. I think not only for the university graduate coming to work, finding the world is changing faster than they thought, and then they need all these skills and to adapt. But also, I think more importantly, we only have a 30% graduation rate in our rural high schools.
In the rural high schools.
That poses also a great challenge in the future when all the AI take over. I don't know. What shall we do? This is so hard to address and so hard to change in the future when these kids grow up. So I think it's so urgent that we need to really work on this.
China has been, I think, one of another thing that we've been seeing is that China's been, according to the BBC, has been opening a new university a week, which is an astonishing rate of change and of infrastructure. Do you see these universities, there's a related question, producing the different type of graduate that might be meeting the workforce needs? And also, will there be any downstream effects in terms of Chinese students who might want to study in the United States? And so I don't know if, Scott, you want to take that one?
Well, specifically with students who would be looking to travel abroad, for example, I think there's lots of reasons why students would travel. So maybe I'll speak to that component of it. I think there are traditionally, I think something on the order of 500,000 students from China studying in the United States each year. Probably internationally each year with a subset of that being in the United States. One large reason we see for that is, for example, maybe poor test scores on Gaokao, and maybe there are students from an affluent family who are looking for almost an edu-tourism type experience where the school that they might qualify for domestically doesn't meet their needs, and they have an opportunity or ability to study elsewhere. So I don't know about the every week the new universities and their ability to address the needs of those students. I would defer to my co-panelists.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just comment on that. I mean, there's a huge sort of supply-demand imbalance, just as there is in America, for middle-class students that want to go to top schools. And I mean, just as in America, the number of spaces at the top is very small, except it's even smaller in China. And so the Chinese government has the challenge of bridging that imbalance. And so but because of the size of China, that imbalance is so much bigger than it is in our country. And so I think they can continue to build, a university a year and still not solve that problem. And so for that reason, I don't think you're going to see a big downturn in the number of Chinese students who also study abroad.
Wenjuan and Cindy, you guys are nodding. Would you like to add anything to what?
I'm just wondering, where does that statistic come from? One university a week?
At the BBC, who knows, Right. That's great. So Scott, I want you to talk about a company that you were with before, not academic partnerships, but this was a company, a high-tech company in Silicon Valley that had an experience in China, and I thought it'd be very interesting for you to share, why you guys went to China, what was your partnership strategy, what happened, and could you just share that for the group?
Yeah, absolutely. So to the supply-demand component of it, and I think in 2014 at the graduate level in the United States, there were over 250,000 applicants from Chinese citizens to universities in the United States, and 71,000 were admitted. So there's clearly a high demand there for, and almost all those programs, 80% of them that they were applied for were at elite schools in the United States. The previous organization I worked for is also an online program management or online enabler, like my current organization, where we help traditional universities bring their programs online. And we deeply explored bringing programs from Ivy League school. These were certificate programs for working professionals directly into China, and overcame and addressed all of the considerations that would really need to be made. That includes partnerships. We actually had a partnership created with one of the world's largest internet companies in China, that's based out of China, for distribution. We had partnerships for establishing all the legal and compliance components, the VIE that had to be set up, the legal entities, ways to repatriate the funds and all of that. At the end of the day, though, the biggest challenge that we found, and also it addressed the cultural adaptation of the content as well. At the end of the day, though, the biggest challenge became the product market fit and the kind of what students would be willing to pay for programs. There's a desire for elite programs from the United States, but there's not a desire to pay the elite price tag that we pay here. In addition, I think there's also, because these are online programs, so this is not like at NYU Shanghai, for example. They work with, I think it's East China Normal University, and many institutions from the U.S. are delivering on-ground programs or maybe even hybrid programs in some scenarios in mainland China. These programs would be fully online, and I think there's a perception in China about online programs or online learning where it's either a machine-taught program or it's a MOOC-style program, and not what maybe we've grown to understand here, that you can take programs that are intimate and taught by a faculty member in a small, intimate class size. I think we've grown, from the for-profits in the United States. We've learned kind of some best practices for online delivery, and that's been adapted by traditional universities in the United States to deliver a student-centric experience. But I think that in China, the perception is that online is somehow less than what the face-to-face component could be.
So I'd like to let Dwun and Cindy comment on that, because that was another question. How is online learning perceived? And it might be different in different markets, but let me start with you, Cindy, and then I'd like all of you guys to comment on that. There's a lot to unpack of that answer, Scott. So thank you very much. So
great insight. I think when we started 2014, parents didn't really believe that children can learn online, and also they don't want to pay. But then when they see that interaction or connection between the teacher and child, they see the product they could have imagined and that they would pay for. So from day one, we actually charge students, and they're very happy to pay for it. And I think it's mostly come down to the perception of the addressable market to the specific product that we've been offering. So if we have them understand the value of the product that we're providing, maybe some video or students sharing themselves through social media, make it accessible and easier to get it, and then I believe there's value that people would love to pay for, regardless of the previous perception.
I think that's absolutely right. I think the demonstrable outcome is really critical from that, and I'm curious how the price point of it's hard because from my understanding of what you do, and you pair the faculty from the United States with students, and
we're in the premium market. So
it's premium.
Yes.
Okay.
So people used to pay $5 US for a session. Now they're paying 20.
Okay.
But then it represents, of course, higher quality. We're paying what they pay to their teachers 4 times, 5 times, even more. So teachers are really happy, and then you have everybody being happy. It's a win-win situation, right?
Love everyone to be happy. Is there an analog on ground, like a face-to-face modality for what you do, though, is my question?
Not really. Yeah, up to date, we have over 120,000 students and then 12,000 teachers. People feel that they're meeting with each other. They don't feel it's online. I think mostly because of the internet natives, the children growing up, feeling more comfortable on their iPad, meeting with the teacher on the other end. So the value is perceived from that real interaction, the connection happening at that very moment.
Sure. In higher ed, online still has kind of an ambiguous legal status, though, because if you're a foreign university offering an online degree in China, the Chinese government will not stop that, but they don't recognize the degree. So it may, if you say you want to go work for the Chinese government or something, it's not going to do you any good. So it's semi-authorized, and then domestically, there was really only a couple years ago that there were online degree programs that were offered as an experiment, and my understanding is the government's still sort of assessing how it feels about that. So there's a little work to be done to get a degree, an online degree program to be an accepted thing in as a legal matter.
Go ahead. Yes.
Comment on this as well. I definitely agree with my co-panelists that there is a big trend of digital learning in China, and I think the reason is very simple. I just made a quick observation that you and my co-panelists, you have your notes on pieces of paper, while I don't, and I think it's because I'm younger. And
No! Oh my God! Oh man! Oh,
we have.
I can't believe you just said that.
Oh God!
So
This is the
if you want
most
to,
controversial thing that has been said at the summit so far.
This is what the arm wrestling is going to happen.
Totally.
I'm going to deep friend you from my WeChat.
I've actually never made really much notes on pieces of paper. And I think it's very simple to become younger. It's just to throw away your notes.
Oh, that's the ticket.
Very good.
Okay.
From the audience,
Because actually, you guys are learning so many tips here. Yeah, exactly.
Well, the point is this: we have 10 million parents on our platform, and most
10 million parents.
Wow.
out of the 400 million K-12 parents in China, which is not.
So
a
all
big
you're looking
proportion.
is at 390 million that you haven't reached.
So
yet.
there's a big space, and actually, from our survey, about 60% of those 400 million parents have a smartphone. So there's a big space to grow. But actually, the kids, their kids are born after the 21st century. They're born in the 21st century. In some cases, after 2010. So, for them, taking notes on pieces of paper is actually more foreign than playing with a smartphone or a pad. There is a very popular Asian culture called Niji Gen, which basically consists of anime, gaming, comics, and lots of kids grow up in this digital space. There's a lot of social implications for this, obviously, that I probably won't go into. But I think if we really respect the children, the kids, if we really want them to learn, instead of just focusing on how we teach, we should really understand their culture. And that's the digital environment. It is a blended environment that they grow up with. So I think that's one thing I want to add, that we are very surprised what the children can do with a digital environment and what they can learn through each other, and through the endless amount of content that can be offered digitally. Maybe one other quick comment is that mobile payment has become really popular in China. I think it's even more popular than in the States. We offer a very cheap product to our parents for about $5 per month subscription, and we currently have about 1 million paying parents. And we got these 1 million paying parents without using any salespeople. So basically, we just put a product out there and says, this is a premium, individualized kind of self-learning content for your kid that you can choose or not. And 1 million parents chose it and paid. So I think the infrastructure is really growing as well. And I think the penetration of the devices, the penetration of the internet accessibility, the penetration of mobile payment, together with the mindset change of the new generation, I think is
Go ahead.
driving.
One comment on this. I was in a panel this morning, listening to a panel this morning. Lady said there are all these 26-year-old, young entrepreneurs in Edtech came to our school system, say, hey, you guys are so reserved. Why don't y'all get it? We're trying to change the world. What I'm trying to say is, I think there's no fundamental conflict between anything offline or online, digital or paper. The center of the universe is the students. What we're trying to do is simply making efficacy better, no matter what works. We don't know in the next 10, 20 years what school's going to be looking like, but neither of us should hold any judgment on the side, younger, older, China, US, digital, brick and mortar, whatever it is. I think that might be the mentality we can make things really work. And we can then work together.
Yeah, it really is very global. I mean, if my adult children were here and they saw I had these notes in my lap, they would roll their eyes.
Yeah.
Because
Come on, Dad.
Yeah, it's like, what is that paper stuff? So it is very generational.
Well, but actually I wanted to kind of dig into something that Duan said about that you were surprised about how the young kids did digital. So talk to me, meaning... So we've already established you're younger than all of us. So I know, we've already done that.
Oh, yeah, you.
But guess what?
You look much younger. Yeah. I'm more younger at heart as well. That's important thing. Sorry.
Well, okay, this is like we're not going to give this up, are we? Okay.
Yeah, I just dug myself a huge hole.
We're going to see whether you're old enough to get a cocktail then. Tell me, so, obviously you guys are younger, you're in touch with these folks. What was it that, no, but seriously, what was it about what the quote-unquote kids did, because I'm really interested in that, with your technology that you guys didn't anticipate?
Okay. So, I'll give you two examples. One is more related to learning. One is kind of not directly related to learning. So we have this kind of an AI tutor without any real tutor to help with kids' oral English speaking and pronunciation. VIPKID offers a similar service using tutors. And I think both these are very important. For any learning, there's a coach and there's an assistant coach. And we are more like an assistant coach. So I'll take maybe tennis as an example. You need a coach to teach you how to serve, but also you need someone to practice with you, like something like 10,000 hours to be fluent with serving. And that's kind of what we do. But if we get a tutor who can teach you how to serve, to practice with the students, then it's not as cost effective and not as efficient. So we use the AI tutor to have a conversation with the students and to tell them when their pronunciation may not be perfect. And the kids think that this is actually like a person.
They do.
Yeah. So they begin to make jokes with.
It's like Siri, right? Have you tried to joke with Siri?
Yes,
not good.
exactly.
Yeah, not good.
And they make all kinds of very interesting jokes. I think that's one example. And this technology currently is not perfect, but I think it's advancing very quickly because we get lots of data from the kids. We have over 1 million kids using this every day. Hundreds of thousands of hours of the kids speaking English. So we can train the tutor to learn from these data. The second thing is that we give awards to kids if they do well on our platform. They collect this virtual point system we call study piece. And they can use study piece to exchange for all kinds of things. Before, we offered real goods. So we would we would ship boxes of gifts to the teachers, and they would distribute these gifts to the kids who did well in homework, which is kind of our main service. And the kids would exchange these study pieces for things like pencils, rubbers, maybe plants and versus zombies, badges, and things like that. But later on, we offered virtual rewards, like virtual badges. And the boys can buy some equipment, like you can buy a shield. The girls can buy bags and shoes, and they can raise pets, and they can have like competitions. And you need to spend study piece to enter these competitions. So, for example, on 12th of March, it was an International Tree Plantation Day. So we had a tree planting competition, but you have to exchange virtual water drops to be able to enter this competition. This competition is real, so you have to actually plant trees. And take
not
pictures.
Virtual, you're not playing
but to enter the
piece,
competition, you have to spend your study piece that you earned through learning. And actually, we have found that over 85% of the study piece were exchanged into these virtual rewards instead of real rewards. Actually, if we want to make money from these virtual rewards, we can probably make money as well by selling some virtual rewards. So I think because the kids are so familiar with this digital space, they treat AI tutors as real people. They treat virtual rewards even more intimately sometimes than real rewards. I think that's something that has a deep implication in learning as well. I think the physical world and the digital world, they are blending as well. There's technology like virtual reality, and augmented reality that is doing that. I think in the future, the technology itself will basically disappear. Either the kid or the parents or the teachers, they won't realize they're using this thing called technology. They will just be learning. And really technology helps us travel through space-time to places that we have never been able to go before. And I think that is kind of the beauty of this. And I think the kids actually are realizing this trend better than us. So when I talk to kids, I feel that I'm quite old as well.
Now we can find some common ground here, my friend. So, changing the topic a little bit, I'd like to go back to the issue of higher education and online degrees at Chinese universities. Greg, you started talking about experiments or efforts of Chinese universities to put their degrees online. Tell us about those efforts, and do you think Chinese universities are going to do that on their own, or is there like a whole new market opportunity for online program management companies to work at Chinese universities, and kind of what's the role with regulation? Or just talk to us a little bit about that, and Scott, I'd probably like you to comment on that.
I'm not 100% current on how this experiment's been assessed, but the government allowed, I think it was 86 universities to experiment with online degrees, and maybe it's just too soon to know because it takes a while to go through the programs. I don't think there's going to be a big role for American OPMs in the China market for a couple of reasons. One of them being that I'm not sure the American companies really want to do that, and I think they're going to be worried about their intellectual property, and joint ventures are just complicated enough as it is doing those OPM deals in the U.S. There's a lot of capacity here. I just don't know. I just don't see that taking off. But also because what makes those deals work in the U.S. is that the universities are looking for a fresh source of capital, and then they do a revenue share. That's the business model.
Yeah.
Whereas in China, there's no shortage of capital. So there isn't really a basis for that model.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The risk capital is a huge component of the value proposition for traditional schools in the U.S. I don't think that translates directly into mainland China. That said, will they go it alone? Will Chinese universities themselves do this, or will they work with a partner? I could imagine, or certainly see, them partnering with a Tencent, for example. I could see, there is the WeChat Learn platform that they've developed themselves. I could see the reaching students through a platform being where the universities in China might need support or assistance in the same way that I think domestically schools in the United States, I think as more sophisticated marketing techniques have become adopted by higher ed here, it's required schools to partner with marketing agencies and other third parties. So I could certainly see as a channel domestic partnerships happening, but I agree with Greg that I don't really see a model for U.S.-based OPMs to be supportive there.
Scott, while I have you, not like you've
Well,
not
not going
paying
anywhere,
attention
really.
before,
Yeah.
but while we're chatting here, I wanted to go back to something else. You mentioned your first answer that, we were talking your experience, and one of the things we were talking the checklist. You've got your local partner, you've got your distribution, you've got your brand, your Ivy League brand, and then you mentioned very quickly, and I just wanted you to talk about this a little bit more and get, especially Drew and Cindy's comments on this, that you were looking to kind of adapt or adapt culturally the content. And could you just talk a little bit more about what that effort was like? And then I'd love you guys to kind of respond, and I'm just interested in that whole effort.
Yeah, so actually I'll give you an example. Specifically, we had a partner that had a series of Six Sigma certificate programs that were both available in English and as well in Mandarin. And we thought that the opportunity of having it both ways, so students even within a single section or a course or a class could opt for the coursework being delivered in either language is really important, and it was developed specifically from that standpoint. I think that can continue on beyond just the actual content, and one of the ways that I'd be interested to want to get your thoughts on this, but this was to be delivered online, but not mobile. And I think that mobile is where the opportunity is. And I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, actually, with respect to what online learning could be with respect to the actual device, be it a laptop or a handheld
Now, these are
device.
grown-ups, though, we're talking about. Okay, these are people way older than you.
And I think, that's right. This is kind of a working professional market. This is looking at, folks, post-secondary anyway, who are in the workforce. And I spent quite a deal of time speaking with international kind of Fortune 500 companies who are based in China, who have significant internal professional development programs, who had some great interest here, but the delivery mechanism that seemed to still be favored, even amongst that population, was mobile. So I'm interested, and that's something we did not do, by the way.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So one statistic I can share is that on our platform we have about 30 million students, and 80% plus of the traffic is on mobile. And actually, out of that 80% plus is on mobile phones instead of pads. But my personal opinion is that whether for adult or for younger learners, none of these devices are actually perfect. I think there's a huge opportunity to actually upgrade these devices for learning, because they were not really made for learning. I think Chromebooks is probably the most popular in the US. In China, even Chromebooks are not that popular. But I really think there's one thing that we need to solve for learning, which is handwriting. So even though I'm not really a big fan of turning trees into paper, I think writing with your hand is very important. And your hand is connected to your mind. When you write, you think. And I think that's the kind of, I'm not an expert on the connection of the written and the spoken language, but I think there's something magical there. And I think somehow we have not made it happen in the devices for learning at the moment. So, we do with mobile phones. I think mobile phones are somewhat better than PCs because it's touchscreen. You use your hand more naturally, but still, I think there's a huge opportunity there to upgrade the device, and maybe someone in the room can take that challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. So the American platforms for online degree programs were really all built on the assumption that people are going to use laptops or or desktops for their learning. And of course, that's not true. You know, in China, the platform is much more mobile. So that back to our other discussion, you know, there's kind of a disconnect there between the products that those OPMs have created and the platforms that would be available in China.
So Cindy, comment a little bit about from your perspective. What do you see from the technology platform side? What's working, what's not? Talk to us about that.
But I would say let's not just caught up on the way of delivery, rather focus on the value of the product, and then focus on where the most knowledge is. I would say that before middle of last year, we didn't have an iPad. Everybody learned on a computer or MacBook. The growth was still significant, it's wonderful, and having a pad doesn't change anything, just enable students to learn more mobilely. But then, still, the reason they chose the program is not neither it's not inexpensively priced, nor we have the best mobile HoloLens, all these fancy stuff. It's merely because of the connection, the content, the education efficacy, right? When a child talks to an elementary school teacher here in the U.S., she feels that encouragement the first time in her life, that she hears 100 ways to say, good job, marvelous, excellent, you're so smart, right? That is the true value in education. And by the end of the day, we want our children coming out of the classroom in brick-and-mortar schools or online classroom or after using gamification app, learning something. The efficacy is where the parents would decide whether they want to pay or not. So a traditional business school way would just to figure out the 10 factors customer would want to pay, want to work with you, and then give it a weight. And then if you figure out that, then would just, it's nice to have. It's not even whether they decide deciding factor. You probably want to focus on that in later terms of development. Also, you may be wanting to work with partners for those things. And then in that way, you're building a system where you can enable even more people. So wouldn't that be beautiful? Right? Just the value of the true product instead of all the other things. That probably does not matter.
So you mentioned Chinese parents, and this is, I think, a very important factor in all aspects of education, right? And we've talked a little bit about how Chinese parents' view of digital learning seems to be changing.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit more about, is that across the board, or is this more like an urban versus rural, or how do you see adoption and changing of attitudes towards digital teaching and learning? Understanding, I think we're going to take it as the assumption that the reason why you're using digital teaching and learning is a more effective way to reach more people and improve educational outcomes. So can you talk about how that varies between different groups and parents within China?
Absolutely. I think so we've been doing one-on-one programs with primarily children in the city and more affluent families in second, third, fourth tier cities. But we've also been working with people like Jack Ma Foundation, delivering into rural classrooms the great teachers from North America. And I think we see adoption of those technology work product magically similar. Of course, once they see how the children are interacting with each other, with the teachers. And then going to the we launched that program this year, and then we had 5 school principals visit VIPKID in Beijing. They showed us a video of how the teachers are working with the kids, and then the children are so concentrated. And even if it's just a screen on the projector or TV with 20 of them and the teacher, they're able to interact very well. They went home proudly tell their parents that my teacher said, "You're the most smart student." And their parents said, "We've never seen a foreigner here in our village. How did that happen?" Went to the principal and asked. So the connection of the world, for education for the young kids, I think is never the mountains or rivers. I think it's just the opportunity to get access. And then I believe with technology, we can definitely make it a beautiful world. So,
would you like to add anything to that, Dawn?
Yeah, maybe just one point that China is a very diverse country. We have users in about 1,000 out of the 2,800 something districts in China, and the schools are diverse, but more diverse are the students and the parents and the families. I think to some extent, technology is helping with shortening the gap, like Cindy was saying, by providing access across space to great content and great courses from all over the world. And I think the problem is that it is very hard to implement technology without people who want to, who are tech savvy, or well, not just tech savvy, but who know how to teach through technology. And I think that is kind of something that neither the teachers nor the parents can learn automatically. That is something that people like us, or maybe the government, should push on.
So you're saying we should start a revolution? Is that
No,
what
no,
you're
no,
saying?
no. I always like the word evolution more than revolution, because the revolutions are bloody.
Just kidding.
But I think by evolving into this new future, technology is kind of a new language. It's kind of like English that everyone should
Which is
learn.
the perfect segue to my next question. Cindy, let's talk about the English language market. Estimated to be multi-billion-dollar market in China. Do you see that growing, staying the same, decreasing? And what are the drivers behind that?
No, I would definitely say it's growing. We've got a 35 people delegate from China, right? Everyone wants to learn English. And then you see so many trends. Now every year we have a 16 million newborns compared to a few years ago, 14, even less. And then a second baby policy. So this is a very important driver of that market. And also, secondly, if you think about it, we have 120 million people came abroad last year. And then they've spent $109 billion US abroad. And that represents the mindset wanting to connect to the world. And those parents are born 1975, 80s, wanting their children to do the same. And they started bringing all these young kids to all these other countries. And then also, if you think about the marketing expenditure nowadays in the English market, it's about 15 billion. But then overall, K-12 after-school tutoring is 75 billion. So it's a gigantic market, right? And then only 20% of population are spending 80% of the market spending. Our urbanization rate is increasing very fast from 50% about a few years ago to about 60% in the next couple of years. So that represents the later 80% out of that, there will be a large percentage being able to afford a lot of programs. And then I think that is a great market trend for anybody who's doing the K-12 business. Welcome to China.
So I guess the short answer would be yes, it is growing.
Yes, it is growing significantly.
No, but that was fantastic to hear the different drivers behind that. Go ahead.
Can I add one thing here?
Please.
Cindy is in the premium market, and I think the premium market itself is growing because more and more people are going abroad, and they have higher income, and they want to spend more on English, which helps their kids go abroad. But I think there's a really good saying that I like, from word to world, the difference is an L, and the L stands for language. And I think that is true for everyone in China. And we have found that the AI tutor product that I mentioned, actually 80% of the users are those 80% of the users who are not paying before, because this product was for free. So there was one instance that I really remembered quite well, was we found one student who studied really hard with this AI tutor, for over an hour every day, but her score was terrible. So we listened to the recordings, and we realized that at the background were her parents playing mahjong every night. And it was in Xiangtan, was a third or fourth tier city in Hunan province. And I think this kind of services through technology opens like a door, a window, opens a new world to these learners. And I think the market is growing not just because of the top end is growing, but also because of the other 80%. They can now learn a new language. They can now learn whatever they want through technology. And I think that 80% is actually even bigger market. And I think maybe they represent bigger social value as well.
Right, in terms of access.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So switching gears a bit, we had a quick call early last week about these kind of questions and some things we wanted to talk about. And I threw out something, well, should we talk about the significance? And is it significant that New Oriental reached $10 billion market cap? Then in this morning's China panel, it was announced, oh, congratulations, Tall, you also reached $10 billion market cap. So these are like two $10 billion market cap from the time we had our little call, a few days ago. I don't know if whoever wants to take this, maybe Scott, you're nodding. Is that significant? If so, what does that represent?
Growth. Right? It's rapid. It's shocking.
Like,
I think it's incredible. I know as I've kind of looked at both those organizations over the last couple of years and seeing this, it's so impressive and I think reflects the level of growth of inside of China and the space entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these unicorns have a big effect because they create a benchmark and they're inspiring to entrepreneurs. So, and it's also interesting that it's 10 billion market cap on a U.S. exchange.
Yes,
so it's really,
that's another important part.
So it's opening up possibilities in a lot of people's minds, both entrepreneurs and investors.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But still, I would say there's a long way to go. If you
Yeah.
look at the top
Okay.
500 valued companies, 100, the last one would be about 70 billion. And then, we education folks, I think, have a lot of work to do. But I would say this is really significant because it represents the biggest private education spending market being recognized at a world level by investors across board. So this is something that I'm sure Don and I and also our 33 other Chinese company delegates feel very happy and proud about. But then still, education technology remains a small sector in the whole market. If you think about today, it's 79 billion total aggregated within 40 companies that is valuated more than 500 million. And then if you're thinking about technology companies, so that's education companies, only 5 companies that's valuated above that cap and then at a 5 billion valuation. So, still a lot of work to do, but I think education, nevertheless, is the biggest market compared to all the other like search engines or advertisement anything you can think about. Yet I think it is probably because of the kind of innovation or change we're able to drive through across board that hasn't yet been recognized. But I think with the 3,000 of us here in GSV, we're very hopeful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there was a famous saying by the richest man of China, kind of funny. He says that I personally like making small goals first, like, for example, making 100 million. And I thought, well, it was probably, he was like me, not being very sensitive when he makes remarks. But I think 10 billion was only a small goal because New Oriental plus Tao combined, I think, serves less than 10 million students out of the 200 million K-12 students. So
it depends what you're measuring.
But I would say, valuation should never be the goal of any company, right?
Absolutely.
I think it's the education, and then we need dream big and act bold.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
On the way we innovate education. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, obviously the market is immense in China, driven by, I think, a core educational value. Can I ask a little bit about one of the things, as from a U.S. university perspective, that is a little frustrating to us is a focus on the test prep and taking tests and high-stake tests. And it seems that, the way we might view that is energy that is spent on doing well on a test could otherwise be spent on learning the thing that you're supposed to be tested on, which in this case would be, in my case, would be English, but whatever the test may be. You know, the Gaokao, and it's just, you know, test taking is such a, seems to be so embedded in the Chinese educational culture. I'm just, you know, and then now you guys are talking this whole new vision of, you know, technology and educational outcomes and access and a whole new way of thinking about education. Do you see that there's any change on the horizon with high stakes tests? And I might start with Dwun and Cindy and then see if you guys have any other comments, Greg, especially from the regulatory perspective.
I think starting from this year, Shanghai's Gaokao for English subject becomes a aptitude test instead of a high-stake one-time test. Actually opens more opportunities for after-school tutoring programs like us. Parents feel more urgent to learn younger age, and then you can do this 10th, 9th grade, 10th, 11th grade, so they don't have to deal with the 12th grade. But I would say this probably have burdened them even more, because then the competition it goes up ahead, right? But
yes,
I think people are really trying to do the right things. I don't.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are so many educators around the globe. As the session I was in this morning, the lady said, you know, we can't really say people are not doing it. They're just getting their head down, doing the real work. Well, we're doing all these fancy stuff. Right? But I mean, what we should have in mind is to work together. And I think by either like graduation rate in universities or like whatever we're assessing with the future success of the kids, everyone is working towards a better goal that is a more of a whole child education. And if you see the new English standard that the government is trying to put forward in recently, it's more geared towards the abilities, the soft skills, the way to think about things, problem solving. So I think I would say everything takes steps.
You know, I absolutely agree with Cindy here, and I absolutely agree with the Chinese government here as well. And I think it's obvious that, for
or
example,
any government.
that when we, maybe not every government, when we go into the workforce, for example, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not really assessed by like a test. When I talk to investors for fundraising, they don't give me an exam to take, and you know, they don't give me like a valuation based on how well I do on the exams. But I think assessment is not totally evil. It's just what
not
we
assessment.
Yeah,
now that's different. I'm talking about the specific
exactly.
high stakes.
It's just the ways we assess or the method we use to assess. And I think also you know, technology is something that we can use to help with that. So, for example, before the homework assignments and the exams were all on pieces of paper, but actually, I think the assignments should be more related to, you know, the real world. But before, you wouldn't be able to assess that at all. The government actually introduced 6 new core competencies, like learning how to learn, learning how to live, you know, having a vast background for liberal arts and spirit for science, taking social responsibilities and being innovative. These 6 core competencies. And I think the goal is to actually be able to assess and to teach and to learn these things. So the trend is definitely changing. If it doesn't change, then the students we educate won't be fit for the future. So, you know, but as we were discussing before, it's more of an evolution than a revolution. So we just have to be patient.
Absolutely.
And you know, we're doing a lot to help the government as well. So, for example, we have lots of data that we share with the government. You know, if they want to implement something like a trial in a particular area, then before they wouldn't know how well the trial is doing. But now we have so much data, so they can analyze. And we work with all kinds of research institutions and professors from academia on the efficacy and the reach of these new ways to reform. Yeah.
I think things are certainly evolving in new and exciting ways, and I thank you all for being here today and discussing them, and it's been a true pleasure to have you, and have a great time, everybody, the rest of the summit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.